Alright, after revealing the star map from the Technomite's ruins, apparently, let's go to Kalidon, as promised.
Also, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like Ratchet's ship was redesigned a bit to match
Yes,
up more with Stitch's.
in general, the spaceships that Ratchet gets usually
This
change
does
in
not seem
appearance all
right.
the time for
It
doing
has been
games.
too easy.
You're not
Oh
really
yeah, but
supposed.
this one.
You're not
How about
supposed
I
to
ride around
take,
on your back while you do all the
particularly,
fighting? I mean that if the
seriously about that.
Technomites want to stay
Oh
hidden,
yes, but this one in
they are making
particular
it
seems like
awfully
it was
easy for us
modeled
to
heavily
find them.
after the one from Lilo and
How did
Stitch,
you
basically.
fit in that?
I was poking around on the computer when I got a message from some
By the
company called
power of believing in
FoeFamily.com. It's
himself.
my entire
Uh-huh.
Faux
family.
family.
I
Huh.
Remember, Dweebs, no one lies on the internet.
get to them.
Yeah,
Hey,
that's the weird thing also. This feels like a scheme that Quark would be doing to
FoeFamily.com.
try and trick
That's
Ratchet and
actually
Clank, but
odd to you.
apparently he is
Whatever. At
earnest
least he's
about
out of here.
this
Let's get
one.
moving.
no, we're still going somewhere with that. But that's
I
not for
figure.
us to actually discover for now. For the time being, we have a facility to enter in. But before doing that, if I recall correctly, we need to resolve a mini game. And also, if I recall correctly, there you go, another titanium bolt here.
Okay, all the chugging. Is this more of an emulation thing, or was it also like this on the PSP?
It might be just the emulation chugging because, okay, outside of the fan vent, because of the upscaled textures, they might flicker. The reality of the matter, also Slim Cognito is there to give you upgrades for the weapons. The reality of the matter is that a lot of these emulated games for the PS4 and PS5 tend to not be optimal. They never arrive at a launch state that is optimal and they need to require substantial amount of patches before they can work. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a mixed kind of thing.
I only asked
I
because
still rather have this than nothing though, to be honest. So there is
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tweaking the old engine, eh?
Why? What have you heard? Who are you? I mean, what are you doing here? Did the committee send you? Sorry, sir. We did not mean to upset you. Yeah, well, you can't be too careful these days, right? I mean, first they accuse me of using nanoroids, right?
Uh-huh.
Then they say I'm like I'm using illegal alternative fuel. Do I look like
you
a cheater
okay,
to
mate?
you?
No. Not at all. You seem a-okay to me.
All right, here, man. Let's race. And I'll prove I'm not a cheater.
You know
If
what
you can
that
beat me,
means?
I'll have a surprise for you.
We have a mini
Yep.
game, specifically another racing mini game. This is more bearable to me than the one from the first game, mostly because the controls are much more manageable. The way you actually grind through the air might be a bit tricky to learn, but once you get the groove on, it's fairly easy to master. So you can actually clean this introductory mission from the minigame and all the subsequent ones that nets you the rewards of bolt and armor parts very easily, which I will do off screen. I will just showcase the mandatory story-related races, which are this and another one later on. Go on,
But yeah,
Droga.
that's the dealio. Hoverboard races are back.
Vengeance.
Like typically up until this point, they were changing up the vehicles each point. Again, this does lead into my theory that again the idea was to make this extremely newcomer friendly. Like, hey, you're coming in from the first game that had hoverboarding, so here's hoverboarding again.
Well, as you can see, that's a different structure than the one from the first game. Concept
Yeah.
arts for Secret Agent Clank showcases that there might have been considering overbike races for that one, but they actually ultimately discarded. Well, there are vehicle sections in that one, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, to bring this back to what I was talking about originally, this game is very ambitious in the sense that, for all intents and purposes, despite being a bit on the smaller side, it's a Ratchet and Clank game that you can play on handheld. Like, yeah, even though it's sadly for just one sequence, they even got the Clank gameplay down pat overall.
Well, to be fair, again, they will also compensate, like I said, that by having Clank doing something else, and even the gadget bots. Again, you'll be able to see properly when we get there.
And that's not to say that there's nothing unique about this game either. Like, it's not like, say, Crash Bandicoot The Huge Adventure, where it's, just Crash, but in 2D. And mind you, that worked out immensely well, especially since it was on the Game Boy. First time Nintendo ever got to touch Crash. But I digress, though. Like, this one still manages to have enough of its own special flavor to make it something worth having amongst the other games. As for why the fanbase may have not cared for it as much, if I recall correctly, that may be due to how it kind of chugged in comparison to the others and how it does feel slower to play in a lot of ways.
Well, it has that kind of dichotomy that a lot of PSP titles have, where the sessions are not particularly too long because they're meant to be something that you can just pick up and stop at any moment that you prefer. But at the same time, they have to uphold, in this case, the rest of the franchise actually does. So it's a balancing kind of thing.
So, you said you'd give us something if we beat you?
This is a shrink
Oh yeah,
ray.
just
They are very
casually
difficult
having
to
a
acquire.
shrink ray. This is the
I
weird
hear
thing.
many
Here you
others
go.
too.
That shrink ray
way
that
too slick for
the
me
guy
to
just
use.
gave to Clank, that's a very critical plot item which will also play a part in the climax. And I think it kind of needed a bit more gravitas in terms of actually being handled, because instead it's just very casually just handled to us. But you,
Oh, I don't know. I don't mind the odd little thing like that happening every so often. Here's the bloody plot armor thing. Plus the personality of the guy who gave it to us kind of fits.
I do get what Tia means, though. Like, as you recall, the title is called Size Matters, and, well, with a shrink ray, you can probably guess what's the main idea
well,
with
it's still,
the game, essentially.
again, mind you, I'm talking about plot specific because, again, for the time being, it will need to be used to be the equivalent of a hacking minigame, believe it or not, as I'm about to demonstrate. But plot-wise, it will become very important at specific points in the game where Ratchet and Clank, need to actually shrink themselves to get in some particular places, and for the climax, meaning that in the case that if Ratchet and Clank did not have this tool, they wouldn't have been able to get anywhere. And it feels something more like that. More like something like the villain should trick them into getting or something. Again, it will all make sense as we get revelations going on, but for the time being, just trust me on that for now.
So
Especially-
this is Ratchet and Clank, but what if Lance Armstrong had helped save the day?
So yeah, there you go. We combine the grind rails with the hacking minigame. Basically, we're on the rails, and we need to actually hit with a wrench specific buttons that allows the bypassing of laser grids. Do that until you reach the end of the obstacle course, and you unlock the door. Simple as that.
Lance Armstrong, do you mean that disgraced cyclist?
We were just hoverboarding against a cheater.
There's so many famous people with Armstrong as their last name. Sometimes I keep mixing them up.
Yeah, don't get him mixed up with Neil Armstrong.
Not to mention, we all know the best Armstrong is Stretch Armstrong.
As a Full Metal Alchemist player, enjoyer, I will beg to differ from that.
I honestly thought you were going to reference Armstrong from DuckTales on that one, Pedro.
Well, actually, I was referencing the toy too.
Yes, and I was referencing instead the anime and manga. Anyway, now we can also have new weapons, and returning from the first game, we do have the Scorcher. Again, yes, they do give you back the flamethrower here. Kinda wish they brought back instead the volcano, gun, but alas. And in this point, the game starts to be a bit dickish to you, because out of nowhere, it gives you this elevator sequence where the floor actually starts going down, and you have to deal with security drones. Because if you notice that this is a Technomite factory where they're fabricating those robots. Again, no idea how this actually, got away with being detected from the Galactic authorities, but again, I guess it's establishing deadlocked, they're not particularly SMRT.
To be fair with this one, it's not like the story goes out of its way to say that the Galactic Federation can never track them. So maybe it's just a matter of they weren't considered top priorities since, as far as they knew regarding their actions, they weren't doing anything that needed to be explored, and Ratchet and Clank in their typical affairs just stumbled on to the criminal
I
operation.
guess it's also because they want to, emphasize the fact that only Ratchet and Clank are the ones that get shit done and save the galaxy, but I don't know. It just feels, like I said in the previous part, it just feels something that should have been handled better, and like you said, it probably would have been easily fixed by having things set in a completely different galaxy again.
I do agree on that, yeah.
So after having to deal with the different rounds, okay, no, it's also now in the fact that they're even bombing the shit out of the actual floor. Like, how worse can it get?
Well, at the end, Ratchet finds out he has to go live with his mother-in-law.
Which one, considering he changes
What is it?
love
What is it
interest
like
each
with the
game?
mother-in-law?
It's a common joke, Lives.
Yeah. Okay. The one I guess he gets from marrying his sweetheart from the third game, who I'm sure
Sasha.
the series will always remember to have Sasha along for the ride, just like it remembered to have Angela
Okay,
along.
now you have to jump off from the elevator, which crashes down. Okay.
Yeah, that's a bit of a... Yeah, that's a first-time player trap there.
No, actually, it gives you enough time. I'm just saying how more ramped up things can get. And that,
Also,
especially
Joe,
also because we need to find a way to get back up, so maybe we can activate this console. And instead it starts flooding the thing with fucking acid, meaning that now we have to run the way back, all the way back up top before we're consumed. Jesus.
Oh, just like that section in Crash to Insanity.
Again,
Cute.
they clearly wanted to make a set piece with this, but holy shit, it gives Ratchet some slack. Or, like...
Ratchet and Clank's thing with love interests. It's like 98% of Bond movies. They always just move on to another one in the next installment.
Okay, with Clank, at least he has the excuse that he's literally a parody of James Bond, so that makes sense. But Ratchet, they try and make his love interest seem a lot more serious. Like, okay, and while he definitely had feelings for Angela, it didn't feel as tight as Sasha, where, okay, yeah, no, like, they made a big deal about
Alright,
how
Venture.
Sasha
Once you
wanted
get all the parts from one particular set, it gives you a bonus. In this case, the wildfire set puts your wrench on fire, meaning that if you strike enemies, you actually deal them, continuous fire damage. There are different combinations, I will show all of them in the extra part. Go on.
It's like, there was a big emphasis with Sasha even wanting to tell Ratchet she loved him before they died and all that jazz, which, yeah, that was a bit rushed and corny, but that's Ratchet and Clank, corny and satirical. But you could definitely tell that they were playing that up seriously. It's like I've mentioned, this is kind of an issue with the series as a whole, but the series kind of sucks at having a recurring cast outside of, like, Ratchet, Clank, Nefarious, and his butler,
And
essentially. Oh yeah, and Quark. Even Quark's a bit on and off, but they remember he exists, and, like, I don't know what's worse, like, having a cast that's there but not using them, or worse, just outright forgetting that your cast are there, but even when you remember that they're there, you're still just gonna do nothing with them.
It's one of the potential problems of long-running franchises, but again, the mileage may vary depending on in this case, the player.
The reason I throw shade at the Ratchet and Clank series is, like, it wasn't even just that the series went on a long while before they forgot about Sasha and Angela. It's that it was practically the first game after Deadlocked that forgot about Sasha, which, okay. If I'm being super duper ultra mega fair, made by a different company. Although, to be fair, if our intel about Oliver Wade is anything to go by, he should have known that they were things. But I digress. Maybe we want to make this a nice separate vacation venture away from everything else, even though it's still in the same galaxy. And God, I realize
Especially-
trying to defend this is a bit tougher
Well, especially
when you
because
actually analyze
other
stuff.
supporting characters like Al, Skidman Max do not, or Scrunch. Well, Scrunch is in this game, but all other supporting characters do not return to begin with. Again, it's because it's also clearly taking inspiration from old sci-fi opera like Flash Gordon, which did have something similar going on, just being very centered around just the main character usually.
It is just a bit frustrating, and it's one of those things that makes me think, wow, if I were just in charge of this or that franchise, until you realize how much work it would take to get to be in charge of said franchise, but still, it's like, and I get it, maybe on their end, it's not as easy to remember all this stuff, and maybe we, the players, have the advantage of being able to constantly look it up, but I feel like if anyone should be like the hotbed of knowledge and intel of a franchise, it should be that of whoever's working on it. And yes, even if these guys were newcomers, surely there was a Bible or something they could refer to for the Ratchet and Clank series.
Also, Jova, refer to that episode in Season 1 of Gravity Falls. Even if you think you can do better than someone, there's at least a chance, if not a guaranteed, that it will become the thing that you swear you will never.
Yeah. It's not to the point where it's a deal breaker for the series as a whole for me, but it's something it could improve on.
I guess it's a good time instead to mention something that I could have in the first part anyway. Composing wise, it's once again David Bergeron, this time alone with, so no future Hitman composer, unfortunately. But I have to agree with what the fanbase says, that this is probably some of his best work for the franchise. It finally starts to assume a bit of an identity, a lot of the teams are more, catchy for what they want to do, and they try to differentiate them enough. So I appreciate that.
Neato.
It will become a bit better also in Secret Agent Clank, because in there, due to the Bond parody pastiche, David has to deal with a lot of different genres. And now it's time for a Gravity Boot Maze. Thankfully you can orient yourself with the first person mode, and yes, there's also a titanium bolt here. And you need to follow the proper path. But you need to watch out, because if you actually stray away from the magnetic path, you will immediately fall and die, because the rest of the entire sphere is electrocuted. And occasionally you get these couple of spheres that potentially can electrify you.
In terms of other music we're going to be hearing from Niels, there's two more after this, the Secret Agent Clank and Ratchet and Clank Future Quest for Booty, but then he moved on to do other things.
Okay, I can tell you, Blibs, already to prepare yourself that for that last one that you mentioned, Quest for Booty, he will be very out of his, of his usual comfort zone, because that is entirely pirate themed, meaning that since it's also a end of 2000, early 2010 product potentially, it has to basically ape up Pirates of the Caribbean score.
Okay, from what I've heard of his work on the Hitman trilogy, he's done club music, orchestral stuff, rock to an extent. So, pirate themed music.
Alright, it's time for our first major boss fight of the game. This experiment, which is called Mungo. No idea if it's a reference to something like the singer Mungo Jerry. I don't know.
This feels like a similar boss to a previous boss.
No,
in the
not
series.
really. It has something in common a bit with some of the bosses of Spyro 3, but that's it. I will say this, thematically doesn't make a lot of sense because this entire facility is about, creating the robots of the Technomites, and instead the final boss is, well, an organic creature. Just feels odd. But being said, the boss fight is not too spongy and it's not too bad. The only major, difficulty potentially is fulfilling a specific condition that asks you potentially if you want like a skill, if it's either a skill point, a trophy, or both, where it requires you to actually defeat him using only the Omni Wrench. It is possible, but it takes quite a while. Yeah, for the third phase, he actually takes one of the tubes.
Yeah, I think now that you mention it, I think it's the orange spike boss creature from Spyro 3 he reminds me of.
Thankfully, as you can see, the sculpture is actually melting his heat bar quite a lot. Well, there you go. In the final phase, he does this shockwave attack.
I'll do the Konami laser scope with this.
Fire, boom, fire, boom, fire.
Fuck.
Also, unfortunately, your shotgun still has the problem that it creates a flash of light every time it fires. I don't remember if it was better with a lower resolution in the PSP original version. There you go, we're done. Fluff. And we do get another piece of armor, specifically the poison set, specifically the chest area. This large MK9 body armor.
And select the armor menu.
Very nice. Dedication to the bit, they do bring back the lady who gives us the tutorials instead of just having Nicole Sullivan child voice act us the tutorials so like she did in the first
we
bit.
found her.
Thank you guys. You are so heroic. I never introduced myself. My name is Luna.
Well, Luna, we should leave before any bad guys show up.
But I haven't had a chance to tell my friends.
Yeah, you guys were mentioning about Nicole Sullivan having a more natural voice.
You mean your friends, right?
Ratchet, that is very insensitive.
No, I mean friends. They will be surprised it was so easy to capture such stupendous superheroes.
There we go.
Very good, Luna. Now,
Clank,
fine.
how have you not
She
caught
sells
on?
seashells by
Yeah, you kind of deserve that.
Hey, he was just trying to help.
You've both been very helpful. The cameras that have been
And
following you
surprise,
have
the
captured
cameras on the
every
previous
move.
world were actually
And now
spying
we have the
Ratchet's every
information we
movement.
need.
For what purpose, we don't know yet. But,
Yeah, we got him. This was just too easy.
well, shit. That's a way to end
Well,
the cutscene.
you're going to Dread Zone 2.
the sequel that everybody wanted. Well, it's pretty clear that the duo is in a bit of a predicament, so tune in for the next part to see where each of them respectively have ended up with where. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.